And good evening, and once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly, and it is now Monday night, so you know what this really means, but since yesterday, Sunday night, I also did the first part of this week's segment. I am now forced to reintroduce myself and say that it's time for part 2 of New Comics, bitches! So, welcome back. Like I said, huge week, big week this week. In this one, I'm happy to say there are a lot less poor, well, you know, there was only really one big, really bad comic in the previous installment, and this one has just some I just didn't care for, but there's a lot of good stuff here this week, so let's kick it off, and let's start with the Independents, and then we'll later get on to DC. So we're going to start with the Manhattan Project's number 6. Now, this is, again, normally one of those pick-of-the-week books, but didn't quite live up to its normal kind of level of this is so incredibly awesome. And I think that that's because this is it's a more character-based tale rather than it being, you know, crazy and insane and over the top and just, you know, whacked out fucking science from Hickman and Pitara. But this is basically, this particular issue is about Helmut Gottrop, who is kind of a wormy little fuck, who is kind of, he's kind of the right-hand man of Werner von Braun, who is, you know, part of the projects. And this is, you know, part of this tale is, you know, a before, part of it's after, you know, some of it's flashback, some of it's future, and then some of it's, of course, current. Well, the future is the current, really. But we see how this wheezy little, almost kind of Where's Waldo looking guy, he basically escapes the assault on the castle that, you know, where von Braun kills all of his contemporaries, really, in the Nazi Party, all the other scientists, and surrenders himself to the Americans. And Gottrop, basically, he makes his way out, but runs smack into a patrol of Russians. And they know Gottrop as one of the rocket scientists. So they imprison him, they brand a swastika on his forehead, and they bring him to Star City, which is basically a tremendously, you know, advanced city in which basically the Soviets are looking to beat the Americans in the space race. And so we have, you know, kind of, what we have here is a really fascinating mirror to look into, because Gottrop, you know, being this kind of, you know, he's smarter than most of the people that he's dealing with, and all that he really wants is, he wants to be recognized, but he also wants his freedom. He wants to be recognized for all of his accomplishments, and as he, you know, his own kind of, well, it's more the narrator's, more the narration rather than an internal monologue, you know, says, you know, is talking about when he's dealing with von Braun, and von Braun is, you know, he's basically kind of smacking the shit out of him because he actually comes up with some really, really interesting ideas for rocket propulsion and so on and so forth. And, you know, von Braun smacks him and says, you know, this is not your discovery, it's our discovery. And, you know, we basically have this moment where, you know, the narration says, you know, basically your failures are your own, your successes are theirs. And when he ultimately goes to work for the Soviets, he discovers that it's very, very similar. That he helps discover some of the things that put Yuri Gagarin in space. Ustinov, who is he's kind of the Soviet commander of this project, promises that if all of his efforts bear fruit, that he will grant him his freedom. But Ustinov is one of the Russians that is killed when they go to meet with Groves and Feynman and everybody when the aliens come by. Well, it's Groves and Oppenheimer, and and so he's killed. Ustinov is killed, and somebody else basically takes his place. And they say, okay, well, you know what, we've this agreement that you made with Ustinov is no longer valid. You don't get your freedom. And at the very end, he says that you are meant to serve masters. Basically, is the whole idea of where this character of Gottrop is going, is that he is meant to serve. He is not meant to be himself. He is not meant to be there just for his own advancement and his own ideas. He's always meant to serve, and that, of course, is reinforced at the very end of the issue, where it's revealed that the Soviets have indeed partnered with our people from the Manhattan Projects, and Werner von Braun is there to basically take to wrest control of him once again. How this will now, this again, because it is kind of potentially a standalone issue, and this is again one of those things about Hickman that does kind of frustrate me about his writing, is that this could very well be, this could end up being more of a setup towards more plot, whatever this arc that's coming up, or just a continuation, because there's no real arcs in this book. There's just more surprises, there's more shocks, there's more oddball awesomeness, how we'll see this character play out now that he's going to work, again as another kind of toady in the Manhattan Projects, has yet to be seen. And this is maybe where, because Hickman sometimes reads better in trade. That is, part of his curse, if you will. I love, I love what he was doing. After a while, I really started to love what he was doing with the Ultimates. I loved every issue of the Manhattan Projects, but it is something that might end up reading better in trade. But again, going back to the idea that this is very much a character-based tale, is that Hickman does something that's almost impossible. Is it actually kind of makes you feel bad for a Nazi. And that's a hard thing to do, because you expect the Nazis are always going to be the bad guys. Well, this guy probably is kind of an asshole. He's a Nazi after all, but but more than that, he's a human being, and he's a really smart human being. And the fact that he's always kind of being ground underneath somebody else's, someone more powerful's boot heel, does give him a very sympathetic arc. So that's basically what this issue is, and I really, really enjoyed it, but just not as much as normal. So this was a 4.5 out of 5. Easy. It's a really, really solid book, and of course, Pitara and his work and his use of color You know, it's all very strong. It's all very, you know, it's a very dense read. You know, it's very typical Hickman, and it's really wonderful. But you know, just not as impactful as it normally is. So, again, kind of the big disappointment of the week here, and those of you who watched Ghost Critic's most recent review might have read some of my comments about this, and that is Buffy Season 9, number 13. Basically, this book is going nowhere. We have the whole, you know, kind of, you know, Zuckerbergish guy. You know, it's Buffy versus the senior partners and their creatures, and also the traitorous who has, you know, he lives by a code of honor, and part of his code of honor is to stop whatever they're basically stop the, you know, the destruction of, you know, this tin can that allows the Hell Dimensions to communicate back and forth by this Zuckerbergish kind of guy. And the problem is, this is just not going anywhere. There's been some interesting... Here's the thing. At the beginning of Season 8, you had, okay, here is a villain. Here's Twilight. And we know that this is going to be the big bad. And the whole season of Season 8 ultimately is building towards, while having these, you know, side arcs here and there, but ultimately everything is propelling towards the revelation of who Twilight was, and of course this big, you know, this major death for the Buffyverse, which of course is the death of Giles, and it's something that's of course is touched upon in this issue. But it speaks to a fundamental breakdown of the Buffy comic, is that basically right now Angel and Faith is the place to go for getting more out of the Whedonverse as far as the Buffy and Angel verses, because, you know, right now over there you have Willow. And, you know, Spike has his own limited series right now, which apparently is terrible. I haven't even looked at one of the issues. Willow's going to have her own miniseries soon. I know that Juliet Landau, who played Drusilla, is going to be writing a Drusilla. I don't know if it's going to be a one-shot or if it's going to be longer than that. A series about Drusilla. And I think I was very repetitive there, so you'll have to forgive me. But it's kind of running all over the place, with the exception of Angel and Faith. Angel and Faith is really staying on target. Everything is growing towards the resurrection of Giles. You know, that is, you know, it's Angel's mission. It's very specific, and despite the fact that we have all these kind of side, you know, arcs that are going on within it, it's still, you know, it's still remaining an incredibly smart and very Whedon-esque read. But here, Andrew Chambliss just doesn't really have a grasp of what to do. Like, there's no direction. There's just nothing to look forward to. And, you know, there's a lot of complaints, obviously, about the lack of magic and things like that in the Buffyverse as it is right now. But that's going on really in Angel and Faith. You know, I mean, they're on Quartoth and everything like that. And, you know, Willow's, you know, kind of getting her magical abilities back. And so on and so forth, and that's it's so much more interesting. It's such a better read. It's so much more entertaining, and it's so much more compelling, really, than anything that's going on in the Buffy books lately. Because we're missing Xander, we're missing Dawn, we're missing, you know, the rest of the Scoops. You know, I mean, yes, of course, it does hurt that, you know, Willow is in Angel right now. Of course, it hurts that Anya's dead. But, you know, the deaths of other characters in the Buffyverse, or in the Angelverse, I should say, like Fred / Illyria, or Wesley, who I would really love to see come back, because he's my favorite Whedon character ever. I know that's a really bold statement to make, but Wesley Wyndham-Pryce has the most compelling and most interesting arc of all of the characters in the Whedonverse, hands down. It's just, so this is just doing nothing for me at this moment. I mean, you know, Georges Jeantet is, you know, he's doing some really nice artwork, but other than that, I mean, you know, the whole thing, you know, with, you know, Buffy turning down the money at the end and everything like that, it's like, what? I mean, okay, you're the Slayer. We get it. You know, I mean, we had, you know, an entire first season and part of the second season where we got, okay, you know, into every generation a Slayer is born. But now, of course, you know, we're going to be having the male Vampire Slayer coming up soon. And I don't know if that's starting with the next issue, but this, you know, basically the gay male Slayer. You know, if that ends up leading towards something, then that might get more interesting, and I might get more excited about this book. But right now, this is really, really close to being dropped. Because this issue is a 2 out of 5, really, at best. I mean, it's not fun, it's not entertaining, and it's going nowhere. So on to the Valiant books that came out this week. So we have Harbinger number 4, where basically we have where we get more introduced into the character Faith, the very heavy-set girl from the previous issue, and you know, we get a little bit more insight into what she is and how she plays, at least initially in this book, because basically the Harada has been told by the Bleeding Monk that, you know, that Peter Stanchek is basically, he's going to be the architect of basically Armageddon, that, you know, he is going to destroy the world. And, you know, Harada doesn't want, you know, obviously he wants to, you know, keep that very much secret. He wants to kind of play, you know, kind of a father figure to Peter and be kind of very present so that it doesn't end up going that way. And I can really appreciate that. But, you know, of course, it's, you know, all this kind of obfuscation that he's presenting. And, you know, Peter's just not getting along with anybody at the Harbinger Foundation. Nobody really seems to really care for him except for kind of like the recruiter and the kind of, you know, the psychic doctor, the psychic psychiatrist. And so basically what we have here is the idea of potentials. It's kind of harkening back to Buffy a little bit. And that potentials, you know, because nobody is really, you know, there are very few that are born with psychic ability. They have to be activated. And Peter is one of them, and Harada was one of them. And he actually says, you know, I'm the first man of the atomic age, because he was actually born, you know, after Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And he, you know, he started with the, you know, he started with psychic abilities. So we, you know, basically they use this machine that that helps to activate, you know, these latents, these potentials, and 1 out of 4 times it blows up their head like scanner style. I mean, it fucking kills them. And you know, and Peter just sees this as, you know, a totally, you know, kind of horrific thing that he's kind of, that Harada is kind of forcing this on them. And, you know, Harada makes the argument basically that they're choosing to be there to help out the Foundation whatever way that they can. And this is where Faith comes in, is that she is a potential. And basically Harada gives him the choice of basically, you know, she is going to be activated. It's her choice, and it can either be through you, who has the potential to activate these latents, or it can be the machine. And of course, you know, Peter tries it out, and it works for a couple seconds, and then it just starts going crazy. So it does not work. He does not make it work. And the whole time he's seeing kind of these, what he believes to be very, you know, strong hallucinations of his old, you know, schizo buddy Joe. and basically he's let out of the Foundation by another one of the people that don't want him there, and he goes to find Joe, who's who's kind of leading him. This kind of hallucination is leading Peter towards finding him, and when he finds him, he's dead. He's OD'd. And he tries to kind of bring him back, but he senses that there's nothing in his brain. It's dead tissue. There's nothing it can do. And then, of course, here comes the psychiatrist lady, and Peter takes kind of a glance around mentally and sees that all these other kind of addicts that are in the same place, their minds are white. And that psiots were there. Why? And this basically, so this is now the question of who are actually the good guys here and who are the bad guys. And this is, this is a really big turning point for, for Peter's life. I mean, and we're just 4 issues in. We're getting into another big turning point for him and his existence, in this Foundation and just in his own life. Is that, these people who have taken him in are possibly the villains. They're possibly the bad guys. So, I mean, this becomes even stranger. And one of the things that I do like about this series is nobody is terribly likable. You are latching on to Peter because he is the protagonist of our tale. But, even he's not a particularly likable character. I mean, he's, he did some pretty horrible shit in the first issue. And, he seems to be kind of atoning for it, but still he's too arrogant, he's too kind of into himself and his own problems and his own issues, and just kind of the bizarreness in general of everything that's going on around him. So, and then the people that are around him, none of them, they may seem to have, again, and this is kind of very defined by the end of this issue, is that none of them seem to have very benevolent agendas, despite the fact that Harada is doing all these great things for the world, all these great inventions, these med bots that he's sending out and everything like that to war-torn areas, and so I mean they're talking about that he's in contention for being for the Nobel Peace Prize, but even he doesn't seem to have really any kind of it's hard to know who to trust in this book. Even Peter, he may end up being the villain, and this this is where this book, I think, is really setting itself apart. So I mean, Joshua Dysart, doing a really fine job on making this a very a very interesting and entertaining read, a very compelling read. It's got great momentum going. The pacing's a little off in this issue, though. But Kari Evans' art, it's kind of it's kind of Brian Hitch-esque, which is a good thing. It's not as, of course, well defined as his stuff, but it's really good. So I mean, so this issue, a very solid 4 out of 5. It's a really solid, good read. Like I said, the pacing is just, it's a little herky jerky. So. So that's why I give it that. That's why I give it a 4 out of 5 for Harbinger number 4. So on to Exo Manowar number 5. So basically, we have Eric, who has, obviously he's arrived on Earth. It's 14 centuries later. The Visigoths are long dead. The Roman Empire is long gone, and he goes to kind of what was a battleground of where the Romans and the Visigoths fought. And, he uses the Man-of-War armor. He kind of sees through the ground, and he can see, human remains and a broken sword. And he reaches into the ground, he pulls out the sword, and this little girl, runs out to him. And, I was afraid that it was kind of going to go in this weird, not weird, but, just this direction where, the girl is going to be kind of like almost sidekicky for a little while, but he's almost immediately surrounded by the military, and poof, he's gone and goes to, goes basically to the Amazonian rainforests. Amazonian. Maybe I'm getting my books crossed up, but I mean, he goes to the rainforest in the Amazon. He wants to chill there. He just wants everybody to leave him alone. He's very kind of Hulk-like at this point in time, and he kind of shaves himself using the old sword and everything like that. But here comes Alexander, who is one of the plantlings, as I was talking about in the previous issue, as I was kind of suspecting that would be revealed in this issue, that yes, these descendants of the babies that the Vine switched out in the very first issue would have offspring, and they would be basically of the Vine, and they would be able to, but they would have completely human form, but they would speak the language and so on and so forth as far as the Vine itself is concerned. And they have positions of great power and wealth and influence in the world, extending all the way to like MI6. Alexander leads this kind of, private army, security, assault team, whatever, to go and, hopefully, catch Eric with his pants down. That absolutely does not work. Eric is very much in battle mode. He, there's an awesome moment where, but a terrifying moment at the same time where, somebody throws a grenade right at him. He picks it up, kind of looks at, kind of regards it for a second, and then shoves it right in the fucking guy's chest, and it explodes, and just takes, obviously the whole guy with him. And he, this is a guy who is a warrior. He is not ashamed about killing his enemies. This is not a, it's, kind of almost a gleeful attitude towards violence, and torture, as we see, as basically Alexander is the only one of this team left alive, in which they decide to call in Ninjak. Now, as far as in the original Valiant universe, I have no idea who Ninjak is, other than he's a really badass ninja. And he does a lot of wet work. And he's the guy that they call in to clean up the messes. And he's ultimately the guy that the Vine's man at MI6 calls in to basically get Shanshara away from, or the MANOWAR armor away from Eric. And so he tracks him, he finds him, and just as Eric is about to kind of get to the bottom of things with the captured Alexander, here comes Ninjak. And we are kind of teased with the idea of kind of like this epic combat between Eric and Ninjak, but that's taken out of the equation because of reasons that I won't spoil. But I'm still hoping that this will happen. I really am, because that was kind of where I was a little bit brought out of this issue. Tactically, of course, it's really smart. So it's a good way for this book to go, but I personally, the only fault that I can really find with this is that I wanted more. I wanted something that would be, kind of a prelude to a big epic throwdown between these two warriors. So we could see, someone who is, at least to me, seems basically human, like Ninjak, squaring off against someone who has, this amazing alien technology. But we don't get that. We get something different. So for that, just kind of the promise of, that happening perhaps in this issue, it wasn't really promised. I guess that's just what I was hoping for. So, and Carrie Nord did not do the art for this issue. It was done by, fill-in artist Lee Garbett. And he's really good. He's actually, the work is really good, but I missed Carrie Nord's a little bit more defined work. It's just cleaner. So this to me was another very solid 4 out of 5. I just, really my only issue, I guess, is my own expectation. And just a couple of quick hits here. Got Jennifer Blood, First Blood, #1. Again, not written by Garth, not written by Al Ewing. I can't even remember the writer's name, to be perfectly honest. And it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to be picking up any more issues of this anyway, because it's basically Jennifer Blood Year 1. It is, kind of her training, her, her learning, her failing, her family. There's nothing that parallels anything that's going on within what is currently happening. There's no little moments that, that we see. Okay, so, because we see that Jennifer Blood has obviously, this book has exploded into just utter craziness right now, and it's awesome. I'm loving that. I'm loving what they've done with this character. But this issue doesn't show doesn't plant any seeds of where it is now. And for this to be running concurrent with the title, it's a real hindrance, and I think that was just a big mistake on their part. I mean, obviously they have a popular character that they've created, it's selling well, so why not try and, it just seems like a cash grab. And, I didn't think the art was particularly good. The writing wasn't particularly good, mostly because not just because it didn't have those moments, but mostly because it didn't really have any really solid character moments for anybody. It was just kind of all over the place. So, there were some things that were kind of unique. There's sometimes things that were kind of interesting, which is why I give this 2.5 out of 5 for Jennifer Blood, First Blood, #1. Fashion Beasts, #1, Alan Moore. Kind of returning to, well, not returning, he's never really gone away. It's just that he's very selective about the stuff that he works on. And this is basically a book that he co-plotted with former manager of the Sex Pistols, Malcolm McLaren, who died a while ago, and is just kind of now seeing the light of day. And basically what this is, all that I can really get out of this book, all that I can see that what this book seems to be about, it seems to take place in this kind of, sort of dystopian future where fashion is the big thing. Nothing really else in the world matters other than, being the next big hit in fashion. Not from necessarily a design point of view, but from a model point of view. So you have men that are basically dressing up like women. It's a very strange, very odd, very bizarre. It's kind of like a fashionista's fever dream, like when they're tired and they're horny. It's what they see in their heads. It's just, there's nothing that really was interesting enough for me to want to pick up the next issue, because it's so fucking bizarre. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. This was just, it's beyond Lynchian bizarre. This is true Alan Moore bizarre oddness. So it was, like I said, it's kind of interesting. There's some interesting moments in it, but ultimately, again, another 2.5 out of 5. I'm not terribly disappointed in it because I know, Moore is definitely kind of on this kind of kick, since he's kind of abandoned, kind of superhero writing and kind of going into his own. It really is something though that does that is interesting to look at, because when Alan Moore was in the big companies, that ultimately ate his soul and everything like that, like DC and Marvel, he was doing really excellent work. He did his defining work for these companies. Even, I know that, for instance, From Hell, it's published by, it was Kitchen Sink Press, so I guess not all of his defining work, and, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all of his other stuff, like Promethea and Tom Strong, all started out with, in America's Best Comics, but that, of course, was bought out by DC. So he found himself working for them again. But, he can say everything that he wants to disparage the big companies and how they drain artists of their creativity, but and honestly, I mean, obviously, you know, Alan Moore's best days are far behind him. I think that's pretty apparent to anybody who reads any of his stuff. Now, I haven't read a lot of his stuff lately. I didn't read Neonomicon. I'd like to know if there's somebody out there who did read maybe Neonomicon and could say anything about it that might be might be indicative of me to maybe want to pick it up. Because if it's anything like this, if it's just way, way, way too out there, then I'm not going to really enjoy it. So, anyway, so moving on to DC. We have, of course, our host of zero issues. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Batman #0. Now, basically, Batman #0 is that we see basically Bruce's first real kind of attempts at crime fighting. And he is part of the Red Hood gang. And you have one guy with the red hood, and his chin is kind of sticking out from underneath it, which I thought was interesting. And they go in to rob this bank, and basically Bruce is passing himself off as one of the gang. But basically, he is discovered, and he says, "Okay, well, I'll give myself up if you don't hurt anybody." And of course, as we come to find, in just a panel later, they're all dead because they've all eaten this poisoned cake that they were all eating for kind of the grand opening. Which was sent to them the night before. So they're all dead now. So basically, Bruce, he makes his way out into the tunnels. He's got his basically, this is kind of, if you harken back to year one, which is basically, this is not a reworking of, but just kind of a retooling of it to fit more into the New 52 universe here. And that is that, we have, instead of, Bruce's kind of first real failure being, when he tries to take out Stan, the pimp, in Batman Year One, and of course comes up against Selina, and the cops shoot him and everything like that. That apparently is no longer canon. Batman Year One is just kind of a story that is now has almost nothing to do with the New 52. But we have him. He lives in a brownstone now that is actually adjacent to Crime Alley. It's about 40, it's like 40 feet away where he's living right now. It's about 40 feet away from where his parents were murdered. And he uses that environment as kind of his strength. It's a constant reminder of, what he's doing all of this for. And, as we see, as he kind of gets back, with kind of his kind of Tronish light cycle type of thing, when he gets back to the brownstone, kind of comes up from the sewers and everything like that. There's Alfred there, and we have this great big double-page spread of all this technology and all like these suits in the background, all of these kind of non-lethal weapons that are that will eventually be retrofitted into Batman's arsenal. But we see nothing indicating Bat. We see none of that. There's no symbolism here as far as the Bat itself is concerned. So apparently in this version of Batman's origin, he hasn't gotten to that point yet where, criminals are a cowardly, superstitious lot. And I will become a bat. It's an omen. There is no moment like that in this book. Because basically we have, that moment, and, Bruce, again, kind of toying around with his tech. He's got this kind of auto-return boomerang, which of course, we know will become a batarang. And he goes up on the roof to kind of practice with it, and he throws it, sticks in the wall, sets it for 4 minutes. And of course, here comes Lieutenant James Gordon. And he is very interested on what Bruce is doing in this area. Why he chose to live in such a, crime-infested, squalor-ish area, as opposed to Wayne Manor. and he's talking about this vigilante that's on the loose, and it's basically a lot of the same kind of suspicions that Jim Gordon had about Bruce Wayne in Batman Year One. So I mean, the character beats are very familiar, but again, it's just retooled slightly so that it's a little bit more kind of on the menacing side. Not so much menacing, but because obviously Gordon's job, part of his job, is to catch people who break the law, and Bruce is very aware that Gordon is kind of he's kind of cleaning up, he's kind of working towards cleaning up the. He has the reputation for being like the one good cop in the bad town type of thing. So they're both aware of each other, but of course Jim is not aware of his real proclivities, but has kind of his suspicions, much like Year One Gordon had about Year One Bruce. And of course, all that Bruce wants to do is get him off the fucking roof. And of course, it does just in time. They get into the elevator door is shut, and here comes plink, the auto return boomerang. And pretty much that's where that story kind of ends, with the exception of this really, really bizarre moment in which the Red Hoods kind of pull up to Bruce Wayne's brownstone, and they're talking about how they're going to take him down. And it says, story to be continued in 2013. Well, what the fuck is this now? I mean, now what's going on? I mean, the whole idea of these Zero issues is that they were intended to be self-contained, but no. And I don't know whether it's absurd or just completely ballsy on Snyder's part that he's actually taking the idea of the Zero issues and kind of saying, what, this story doesn't have to end here. We can have kind of a new, not origin, but just a new take on how how Bruce Wayne will eventually become Batman. So again, I'm very much on the fence about that. That it has this this very open-ended ending for his part, for Snyder and Capullo's story, part of the Zero story, and it's terrific. I mean, it's the story itself is really well done. It's exceptionally well written. Of course, the art by Capullo is great. But but the issue doesn't stop there, because remember, we have the backup stories now, and the backup story here is very interesting, very well told. James Tynion and Andy Clark, the writer-artist here. James Tynion, of course, who co-wrote the annual, the Batman annual. We have basically the tale. It is now, it's because this issue of Batman, I need to actually say, started 6 years ago, and now in this backup story, it's now 4 years ago, and basically it is the tale of each of the. Not each of them, but 4 of the eventual kind of Batman sidekicks. Is that we have, it starts with Barbara and Jim Gordon on the roof of the police department, and he's about to turn on the bat signal for the first time. And it's basically, again, the idea is to let the criminals and the scum know that he's out there, that Batman is out there. But we have, in this interlude between this moment and that, we have these moments where we see Tim Drake about to be kicked out of his, his boarding school, but of course he exposes his, the headmaster of the school for embezzling funds. Just by using, just a little, like a smartphone. So again, showing off Tim Drake's tech abilities, which is one of course, his big things. That was kind of his defining Robin moment, or his kind of defining Robin thing, is that he was the tech guy. Then we also have Dick Grayson coming to town with the circus. And we have a young Jason Todd who is mixed up with the criminal element of Gotham City, but he's been told by this guy that he's running with that that nobody's going to get hurt, and of course the other guy ends up shooting the guy that they're robbing. And so he really takes offense to this and wants to really punish this guy, and he's actually mistaken as being kind of a good Samaritan. So again, we have all of these character beats which are really strong as far as defining who these people will be. Because Dick has flair, and of course the acrobat. Jason has rage, and he has this kind of untamed, this unchecked aggression and this violence to him. And obviously he's kind of on the wrong side of the coin to start off with. And then, of course, we have, as the bat signal is alit in the sky, we have Barbara kind of realizing, So, of course, the thing that is most confusing about this is that, Tim Drake is supposed to be written out of Batman continuity. So maybe this is kind of his little kind of farewell moment that he will have as being a Robin. That, he will basically be written out of Batman continuity, who will be his own character, as far as being Red Robin in Teen Titans or whatever. So, but those moments I still think were really striking. I'm still really upset. And again, maybe this is, again, a really ballsy move on James Tynion's part that, what, fuck you, DC. I'm going to write, a final moment of Tim Drake being recognized as a Robin, as one of, his future sidekicks. Again, the whole, 4 or 5, whatever year continuity thing is still very troublesome. But, I mean, these writers are doing the best they can to work around that. And so this is a very strong issue. Again, not as good as, it's still really, really good. But again, there were some confusing beats here. There's some confusing moments. And like I said, I have yet to tell whether or not they're really ballsy or just kind of absurd. So this was a 4.5 out of 5. Very solid. I mean, Snyder, Tynion, Capullo, Andy Clark, they all do a really terrific job on this issue. Batman and Robin, number 0. This was damn close to being my pick of the week because it's a really terrific read all the way from the beginning to the end. Because what we have here at the very beginning, we have Damian, because this is his story. Obviously, we have Batman's own story and his own 0 issues, but we have Damian. This is his tale. It is his birthday, and this is now whatever year ago. And we basically have what Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason do here. They are again retooling Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert's initial run together on Batman, the Batman and Son arc, in which they have the Ninja Man Bats and Talia and so on and so forth. And but what this is really all about is Damian's training. He has this literal kind of baptism of blood, which I thought was a little kind of hammy. Quite honestly, it was a little too forced, that moment, I thought. We have Talia teaching, teaching Damian about, who he is, the kind of, lineage that he comes from, at least as far as the Al Ghul stuff, but says nothing about who Damian's father is. And says, you will have the right to know who your father is, and you'll actually get to meet him on your birthday, but it has to be the birthday in which you defeat me in combat. And there's there's this great 2-page spread where we have these frames of each year going by, where Damian, he's learning a little bit more, and then we have a panel with Talia and Damian saying, Talia's like, "Happy birthday, Damian, you lose." And again, another year, happy birthday, Damian, you lose. And again, so on and so on and so on and so on. more learning, more losing, until we finally get to this 1 year in which the man bats are there. He comes in, he slices off both both the arms / wings. He's got twin MP5Ks that he's just mowing everybody down in his path, and he finally wins combat against Talia. And and this is of course leading up to the famous page from Morrison and Kubert's run, where we have, I imagined you as taller. We have, Damien in his kind of, his outfit, holding the katana to Bruce's throat. And, we get much more of an understanding of where Damien's come from. Now, there are so many terrific character moments in this issue. For everybody. I mean, for everybody. There's two players, really. There's Talia and there's Damien. And one of the real highlights of this issue, though, is Patrick Gleason's art. It is fantastic. There is almost not a better, book that came out this week with better art. It's just so terrific. I mean, just how he's able to kind of catch the the ease in which Talia kind of comports herself, throughout, being a loving mother and being a nurturing mother, and also being a very deadly combatant, and that it's just very, it's very classy, I guess is the best word that I can think of. It's very composed. It's like she moves like silk. And, we have, these great expressive faces that he gives us from Damien. This awesome little moment where he actually gets, Bruce's cowl that she's kept away in her, in her bureau, and puts it on, as a little kid. Of course, the mask is way over his face and everything like that. It's actually really cute. And he says, "I'm a bat." And, it's hard to imagine Damien as a cute little baby, as a cute little kid, because he's, the most violent little kid that there ever was, but we see that there's good reason for that, and, which is why I'm glad that a comic like Batman and Robin exists, is because we get to see from a very unique perspective the relationship between father and son, and how, basically Batman is doing, Bruce is doing everything he can to kind of deprogram Damien from his assassin ways, his killing ways, to finding, better, ways to kind of exert himself. So that was an absolute 4.5 out of 5, leaning more towards 5. That was just a fantastic issue of Batman and Robin. Batgirl number 0. Now here we have just a really nice reteaming of Gail Simone and Ed Benes from when they were, of course, together on Birds of Prey. But this book is simultaneously, it's a joy to read, but it's very confusing to me. And there are moments in it that I alternately love and kind of hate. And this is not a testament to, this is not a slam against Gail Simone as a writer, certainly not a slam against, Ed Benes as an artist. In fact, I really like the way that Benes kind of pulls his normal art style back, his normal kind of cheesecakey stuff back, and just gives us some really dynamic work. But then I alternately, love and hate that, because basically what we have here is, we have Barbara. She comes in, it is 4 years in the past, and she is learning more. She wants to learn more about Batman. Of course, this leads into, of course, her own father's investigation, and he is now commissioner of police, at least from what I remember. He maybe captain, I don't know. But, she and James Jr. come into the police station, and it's more so that Barbara can learn about Batman. But then they run afoul of this this kind of mass murderer named Harry X, who is his specialty is abducting and killing women. That's what he does. But he seems to be kind of he sees himself as kind of this insane prophet, and of course he's huge, he's muscular, he's big and ripped, and he just pain is kind of a religious thing to him, so there's that old hat kind of archetype, but there's a little bit of a spin on it because it's not like he's killing all of the horrors or anything like that. He just it's what he does. It's just his killing women is just what he feels apparently that he needs to do. But he has people that work with him, and they're trying to break him out. And so here's Barbara and James Jr. getting caught in all of this chaos, and of course this leads to again, this is the thing that I alternately love and hate, which is that everybody who does evil in the DC universe can apparently see that James Jr. is evil, and nobody else can see it. Nobody in his family, none of the good guys can see it. None of them can see it, but apparently the bad guys can smell their own a mile away. And part of what he keeps calling James Jr. an abomination. Of course, James Jr. just makes these very unusual, bizarre, disturbing kind of observations about what's going on around him. But here he seems to be about, I don't know, like 13 or 14 years old, and of course in 4 years he's like in his mid-20s. So again, there's the disparity into him, this whole kind of stupid fucking 5-year thing that DC and Didio and Johns and Lee decided they were going to do when they were doing when they were doing Justice League, and said, well, this takes place 5 years ago, because apparently Batman has gone through, well, maybe now just 3 Robins, because if Tim Drake is going to be written out and Stephanie Brown is already gone, that this is just where it's going. So it's like, fuck you, man. Just all this bullshit about the 5 years is something I just cannot get past, especially when it's coming to these Zero issues, especially when it's coming to Batman. Because there is so much mythology that needs to be drawn on, and they've essentially continued a lot of this into the New 52. And, we get that, basically, but just going on from there is that I like the idea of the bad guys being able to sense it, because it is cool that they can kind of smell their own. But and I also like it from the point of view that that the good guys are blind to it, because they want to choose to see the best in him because he's a Gordon. And that's really what it comes down to. If this kid was anybody else, they probably would smell it. From Dick to Bruce to whomever, they would sense that this is a kid that is destined for evil. But his family wants to see it. They want to believe it. They don't want to they don't want to see him as being a potential, Section 8. But she puts on, this kind of Batman suit, this kind of, jerry-rigged Batman suit they put together to kind of show off, kind of like the what Batman uses in his fight against crime. She's got, the two kind of like, whatever, the martial arts sticks and everything like that. And she defeats Harry X. And here comes Batman in to save the day, but he's actually too late because he's the bad guy's already been defeated. And basically, he just kind of regards Barbara, without knowing who she is, of course, at the time. He just kind of says, nice work. And he's gone. And this, of course, leads her on her whirlwind year, where she is Batgirl for 1 year. And then she hangs it up. She gives it up. And then, a couple of years later, knock on the door. The Killing Joke is part of canon in the New 52. The Killing Joke did happen. But Year One apparently did not happen. Oracle never happened. That was one thing that did upset me about this book, that there never was an Oracle. There never was really a Birds of Prey prior to the New 52. It's a book of erasure. That's what I felt this book was, is that it was taking a lot of things off the table, but maintaining the one thing that still many fans believe to be a really, many fans of Batgirl in particular, and her character, believe to be, kind of a women in refrigerators type of thing. I still happen to believe that Killing Joke is a masterpiece. Of course, I mean, I never felt like Barbara was being marginalized by this, and in fact, even coming out a stronger character as Oracle. The fact that they've completely written Oracle out of the New 52 is bothersome, is troublesome to me. So, despite everything that I thought was bizarre or that I didn't really care for, this is still a good book, and it's a solid 4 out of 5. Like I said, it's nice to see Simone and Bendis working together again. They obviously have a pretty good shorthand, and they work well together. Demon Knights, number 0. Again, this was, like Batgirl, kind of disappointing in the sense that this is a book about Etrigan and no one else. Well, okay, we do have a little bit of Madame Xanadu as Nimue. As one of the Fae sisters, and Jason Blood, of course. And basically, what we have as it starts is that Etrigan is in hell. Of course, he's a demon, and he's trying damned hard to rhyme, because he wants to be of the rhyming demon caste. But he's just not good enough yet. And here comes Lucifer to basically say, okay, well, you know what? You are failing to please me, demon. So, more punishment for you. Meanwhile, back upstairs on Earth, in Camelot, in the time of kind of joy and happiness and, the land and the king being one, basically we see Jason of Norwich. He is the scribe for Merlin, and that is all he will ever be in Merlin's eyes. But Jason wants more. He wants to be able to... There's an arrogance to him. There's a sense of entitlement because he's been taken in by Merlin to become his scribe. He feels that he's going to be treated to more information. That he's going to learn the ways, perhaps, of being a sorcerer. But no, that his lot in life is to be the scribe, and this is very upsetting to him. And we begin to see parallels between the Earthbound Jason and the Hellbound Etrigan. And we start to see, well, a bit of a lashing out against authority from Jason, which actually throws him into the stocks. Well, not the stocks literally, but into the holding cell for a day, in which he is visited by Nimue. We have interaction between Merlin and Morgan. We have in Hell, though, we have a much more significant protestation of power, as Etrigan looks to defeat all comers in battle to prove that he is, that he is the more powerful demon. Up top, Camelot is starting to fall, and down below, Etrigan is starting to fail. And so basically here comes Lucifer's son, Merlin, because he is the son of the devil, to basically make a deal, strike a deal with Etrigan, that he will, in the future, he will come to do great things for the world. But for now, he needs to trade places with Jason. So Jason in hell, Etrigan is out in the world as Camelot falls around him, and it's just, you know, we see why these two are picked to be together, really probably for the first time in comics. I mean, I know that at least for the New 52, obviously, but you know, I don't know. I kind of remember Garth Ennis's run on the Demon. I would like to get more issues of that. I have some, but I'd like to get more. And I think it maybe goes a little bit more, that might go a little bit more in depth into kind of the relationship that they have, you know, as far as maybe an origin tale or whatever. But I mean, I guess it probably wouldn't even matter anyway, because this is, after all, the New 52, and that was done in the 90s. So again, we have, you know, Cornell doing some really nice work. Bernard Chang takes over art duties, at least hopefully temporarily, from Diogenes Neves. You know, we see, you know, kind of where, you know, the finale of this issue is kind of the finale of issue number 12, which I thought was really interesting. You know, so basically making way for, you know, the cliffhanger that we left off at in number 12. And it's you know, it's the expectation that I had. One of the things I really wanted to see, because I love Etrigan. He's pretty much the main reason I started reading this book, but it was the other characters ultimately that are keeping me involved in this book. I wanted to see, maybe in this issue, they could divide some time, that Cornell could maybe divide some time between the characters that we don't really have a clue about, like Algebur, and like Exoristos, and like the Horsewoman. You know, maybe this could be kind of a three-parter or something like that. You know, we learn more about them in their, before they came to meet up with, you know, our kind of Dark Ages Justice League, you know, because we have a lot with Vandal Savage, we have a lot of, you know, history on Etrigan, we have a lot of history on Madame Xanadu. So to learn more about the supporting cast, I think would have served this book better. But all in all, this is still a really well-told tale. Again, just against what I was hoping for. Like I said, just on its own, it's a really strong tale, very well told. It's a 4 out of 5 for Demon Knights number 0. And this now leads me to my book of the week. And that is Rocketeer, Cargo of Doom, number 2. Oh my god. Okay. First of all, those of you out there who are fans of Daredevil, beg, borrow, steal, kill to get this book on your shelves. I don't see a lot of you out there talking about this. Maybe I have to look harder, but this is, it's Mark Waid and Chris Samney. I mean, how can you not, you know, a lot of you spend your time, you know, really, you know, waxing very eloquently about the great work that Mark Waid is doing. Obviously, it's great work. He won the fucking, you know, he won the fucking Eisners and the Harveys. Harveys never give that kind of shit out to any superhero comic. And here comes Mark Waid along. He, you know, does this fantastic work with Daredevil, and all of a sudden, you know, the whole fucking world loves him. And that's great. Daredevil is a great book. But, you know, take the time to find these issues, because they are fucking awesome. Of course, you have to have an affinity for the Rocketeer, but if you don't, what's wrong with you? Because the Rocketeer is awesome. Basically, what we have here is that we have a little bit more of the inkling, well, a lot more of the inkling of the plan of our villains. You know, we start with you know, this kind of pirate shirted guy, you know, on the ship, on the boat, and you know, and this you know, this big, huge, fat guy in New York who's running the show. We don't see his face or anything like that. We just know he's the guy that's running the show. He says, you know, don't go off plan, or else I'm going to screw you up in a big way. And he actually proves his kind of superiority by blowing up from a distance some of the crates in which the cargo is in, and it gets out and it kind of hurts our pirate shirted bad guy here. But the whole real plan is to get to the Rocketeer. For whatever reason, the Rocketeer is very crucial to their plans. So we also get a new G-Man who stops by to basically, you know, he gives Cliff a piece of his mind and a piece of his fist to go along with it, because he doesn't know, obviously, about the kind of the very, very inappropriate touchy-feeliness of the previous G-Man who was there to, you know, from the Department of Aviation or whatever exactly it is, that's there to kind of clear you know, Cliff and everybody, and you know, Cliff and Peavy to kind of go up. And you know, we have, you know, kind of the real kind of emotional content of this book being told kind of from between the characters of Sally, you know, Peavy's niece, and Betty, is that they are both very much vying for Cliff's affections. Sally's is much more kind of a girl school crush, you know, very, you know, kind of a, you know, or schoolgirl crush, excuse me. And Betty, of course, you know, she is, you know, she's the love of Cliff's life, but she feels that she's losing him. And this is done, obviously, with some dialogue, but really through Sam Nee's art. This is very well communicated. You know, how you know, incredibly in love with Cliff that Sally is, but also how desperately in love Betty is with him. Even though, you know, they fight a lot, and you know, she never really seems to be that outwardly supportive. You know, and there's all these kind of little jabs and jibes going on between Sally and Betty. And the fact is, I think that Betty actually really likes Sally, but just doesn't like the fact that she is vying for Cliff's attention. But so we have this great aerial battle between our pirate-shirted nemesis and Cliff, where he obviously has, you know, he's you know, this our villain is very strategic in the way that he plans to take out the Rocketeer. He wants the rocket pack. For what purpose, we don't know yet, but he wants it. And Cliff, being more kind of lucky than clever, is able to at least save himself from after the pack is stolen from him. And of course he kind of plummets to Earth, not too far, but far enough to at least get pretty heavily winded. And who is there but our brand new G-Man, who is actually a big fan of the Rocketeer, and discovers, of course, that Cliff is the Rocketeer. He does everything that he can to help him, and you know, and he has more of a kind of law enforcement feel to him rather than a kind of just good old-fashioned bureaucrat. And he basically says, you know, when he's commenting about, you know, his, the people that Cliff are up against, you know, is that they smell of the sea, smell of the seaports, and that's where we'll find them. So he actually helps Cliff in chasing down this lead. And of course, you know, we're meant to think that the Rocketeer, you know, he's good on his own. Of course, I mean, Cliff is unfortunately horribly inept as like a, you know, a mystery man costumed hero. It, you know, more of his, you know, he obviously has, he has some strength, he has great courage, he has, you know, this bravura that, you know, that knows no bounds, but he also doesn't know his limitations. Is that he can't take on a gang of burly sailors and everything like that on his own. And then we get to the master plan, which I will not reveal, but I will say that definitely Wade's work here owes a great deal to a very famous film about monkey business. That's basically the only way that I can put it. It is to see Wade and Samnee, two people who obviously have a tremendous affection for this character, who have a tremendous affection for the pulps. They working together on bringing the Rocketeer kind of into the new millennium, at least as far as storytelling is concerned, to reinvigorate this character and give him new and, you know, more attentive life, because you have, you know, here's, you know, a huge superstar writer, and definitely someone who is, if, you know, if not yet, is definitely someone who should be a superstar artist, you know, working together on the Rocketeer. You know, one of the great kind of post, you know, modern pulp heroes, you know, postmodern pulp inventions, if you will. And it's just glorious. Every page is just dripping with this, you know, with the wonderful Samnee art, this great, smart, fun, you know, Wade dialogue, this terrific adventure tale, these great action moments, these great character beats. I mean, it is full. I mean, like, you know, Mark, a Ghost Critic, was saying, you know, he really loved this week's issue of Daredevil versus X-Men, which I also did really like, because it was, you know, it was everything fun. It was everything that a great comic book should be. Well, this is Rocketeer Cargo of Doom is everything and more of what a really great comic book is, because it's not too adult, but it's not too kiddie. It's, you know, it's really smart, it's really fun, and it's gorgeous to look at. I mean, it's such a breath of fresh air right now that rivals anything that he's done on Daredevil. This is going to be, I know that if it continues down this road, this is definitely going to be one of my favorite books of the year. So if you're out there and you haven't been getting Rocketeer Cargo of Doom, start getting it now. So that's why I divided this one up into two segments, because this is an hour. This one's going to be an hour 20 by the time I'm finished wrapping it up, and the other one was like an hour 10. So that's, we've got, you know, an epic film of 1 week of comic reviews. But a lot of it ultimately has been kind of ranting about certain things, about AVX, about, you know, New 52 continuity opposed to the previous DC continuity. So, like I said, there's some really good stuff out there this week, but if you take anything away from this, take away that you need to go into your shop, or you need to go onto eBay, or, you know, find out if there is a trade that you can ask your local comic shop to get for Cargo of Doom, or even how long Cargo of Doom is going to go on, because I'm not really sure about that. I haven't read up that much about it, because I don't know when it's going to end. I just want it to go on and on and on forever. I want Wade and Samnee to keep doing this book forever and ever and ever. So that is it for this week's New Comics, bitches! So, of course, if it's your first time here, which is highly unlikely, but if it is, please subscribe. Thumb it up, thumb it down, comment, complain, criticize, critique, whatever, down below, down here. Not down here, I mean down below in the columns on your screen there. And you know, tell me what you're reading. Tell me what you think I should be reading. You know, answer some of the questions that I put out there. You know, Alan Moore's, you know, Neonomicon, stuff like that. But that's really it. So again, thank you for watching. It's been a fun trip this week to go off on y'all, as it is every week, really. And so again, thank you for watching. This is James Donnelly from the Shadow Gallery, saying goodnight and reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadows.